Let us start with the fourth part of The Selfish Giant by Oscar Wilde. Before we start the fourth part, let me remind you the end of the third part, where we saw that the giant's behavior was changed and he allowed the other children. Then they entered the giant's garden, and with them came the spring. Jubilant giant took an axe and knocked down the wall. People were surprised to see the children playing with the giant. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. But where is your little companion? He said. The boy I put into the tree. The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. We don't know, answered the children. He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon, when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend and often spoke of him. How I would like to see him, he used to say. Let me discuss to you that the giant invited every child to visit his ground with special mention to the youngest child. But nobody knew him. The giant was kind to every child. Years rolled by. The giant grew old. He watched the children playing while sitting in an armchair. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about anymore. So he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. I have many beautiful flowers, he said, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. The old and feeble giant watched the children play while sitting in an armchair. He said that the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep, and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. The giant no longer hated the winters. One winter morning, he was surprised to see the lovely white blossoms. Its branches were golden, bearing silver fruit. There was the little boy sitting underneath. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden he hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. The giant was very happy to see the child and rushed towards him. On seeing his injured hands and feet, he grew really angry. He Here we come to the end of part 4 of the story, The Selfish Giant. Let me analyze to you the inner meaning of the part 4 of the story, The Selfish Giant. You must listen to the inner meaning of the story very carefully. This moment foreshadows the story's ending and the little boy's return. It also proceeds from the Catholic concept of charity. Love for God above all, which in turn provokes love for one's neighbor. The giant loves the little boy best of all, and this relationship is what begins his broader friendship with the other children. The giant's character has greatly developed since his first appearance, and it shows in how he now values the children far above his possessions. loved the garden because it was his, but now he values the children because of their innate goodness and beauty. His self-interest is no longer a part of how he assigns value to the world. This is the first sign that the little boy is not what he seems. His appearance in this passage, seemingly still the same age as years ago, is itself a miracle. But in addition to this, the tree's transformation is far beyond what the neighborhood children brought about earlier in the story. At this point in the story, the tree builds into a symbol of the cross, and its adornment with gold and silver seems to mirror ornate Catholic crucifixes. The wounds of Christ's crucifixion, called the stigmata of Christ in the Christian tradition, are the clearest identifying marker that the boy receives without being named outright as Jesus Christ. Here we come to the end of part 4 of the story The Selfish Giant. The story will be continued hereafter.